is now on for an event that will be out of this world, and you don't have to be a space geek to be excited. Get those glasses ready, because we are now just 3 days out from Monday's total solar eclipse. People are already on their way to the 15 states along the path of totality, stretching from Texas to Maine, and they will be able to take in a wondrous 4 minutes and 28 seconds, where we'll get a glimpse of the moon completely blocking the sun. NBC News meteorologist Angie Lassman has a really cool look at what's about to happen.
A solar eclipse occurs when the moon passes directly between the Earth and the sun, and the moon blocks the sun for a viewer on Earth. During a total eclipse, the moon lines up perfectly to fully obscure the sun, resulting in totality. The result is a shadow that will cross North America from Mexico to Canada. This is why the 2024 eclipse event will be known as the Great North American Eclipse. It starts as the moon slowly obscures more and more of the sun. As it progresses, the surroundings take on an unusual hue, and shadows become crisp and detailed. As the sun dwindles to a slender crescent, as seen through eclipse glasses, daylight dims and shimmering shadow bands and crescent-shaped shadows might dance across the landscape. Then comes totality, when the soft wisps of the solar corona surround a huge hole where the sun used to be. The solar corona is the outer part of the sun's atmosphere. This corona, normally hidden by the sun's brilliance, becomes visible during a total solar eclipse when the moon completely blocks the sun's surface. You find yourself in an eerie twilight, surrounded by a spellbinding sunset glow. Finally, totality ends, and the sequence unfolds in reverse. Now let's take you through the timeline of how the solar eclipse will sweep across North America. The path of totality will sweep over parts of 15 U.S. states, starting in Texas and ending in Maine. The whole event will take about 2.5 hours for the shadow to make its way from the Pacific Ocean across North America and over the North Atlantic Ocean. To witness the event, you'll need to be within the 108 to 122 mile wide path of totality. But don't worry, if you're not, you'll still see quite the show, with a partial eclipse visible from nearly everywhere in the United States. But some places will see it better than others. For cities in the path like Dallas, Indianapolis, Cleveland, and Buffalo, totality will last approximately 4 minutes. During those minutes of totality, you might notice a slight temperature drop and a change in the behavior of any nearby wildlife. The mesmerizing moments of a total solar eclipse along a narrow path for just a few minutes make it one of nature's rarest firsthand experiences.
Angie Lassman with that very cool look. Thank you. And joining us now is the director of Buffalo State's Whitworth-Ferguson Planetarium, Kevin Williams. Kevin, good to see you. Love the graphic behind you. You're there in Buffalo, right in that path of totality. Not everyone gets to see the total eclipse. In fact, NASA reports that this total eclipse only happens once in every 100 years or so in any given location on Earth. So it happens more often, but in one spot, you might only see it once in a century. So have you seen one there before? And what are you most excited for?
Well, good morning, Anna. Thanks for having me on. You're right. Total solar eclipses are rare. The last time Buffalo and Western New York experienced one was in 1925, so almost 100 years ago. And after Monday, the next time there'll be one here in Buffalo is 120 years in the future. So it's this really special event.
For those who aren't lucky enough to be along the path of totality, what can they expect? Can they still get in on the action in some way?
Yeah, what's really nice about this eclipse is that in addition to the main shadow along that path of totality, there's what's called the penumbra, or the partial shadow, which will cover all of the continental in the United States, actually. And so for those folks, they'll be able to see a partial solar eclipse where only part of the sun gets covered by the moon. They will need eclipse glasses to see that, but they'll be able to see, depending on where they are, different amounts of the sun covered.
But can you explain why not everybody has that total solar eclipse? The sun is way out there, right? I think the kind of layman would just think it's so far away. Shouldn't we all be able to see the same thing when it comes to the moon passing the sun?
I want to say something about what you're looking at right there pertaining to the eclipse that happened in 2017 and the one that's fixing to happen Monday. You basically have an X right there of the beginning to the end of where it traveled through the continental United States. The X marks the spot, basically, of right, not so much in the center of America, but in the center of another event that could very well be staring down the barrels of, pertaining to the New Madric Fault, which is just to the left of that, maybe 60 miles. Now, some people may say, well, that's just a coincidence that that X is right there in basically southern Illinois, or the northern part of Kentucky, right there where it joins. Well, is it? Or is it a sign? Because Christ said that in the last days we would see signs up in the heavens and signs upon the earth such as man has never seen before, for the powers of heaven will be shaken because of the sin of the end time events that are vastly emerging and bringing humanity as well as the planet to the end. I think it was about a year ago, maybe a little longer than a year ago, that the news caught whiff of 3 major whales jumping out of the water at the same time in the Atlantic up towards, I guess it was up towards Maine somewhere, that somebody had caught this on a video camera. And the first thing they thought of was entertainment. The first thing they thought of, wow, isn't that cool? And I responded back, no, it is not cool. That the animal life is trying to tell us something, regardless whether it's the mammal animal life, or the birds, or the insects, or the trees dying because of the beetles out in Colorado, or other major events that we have seen now displaying themselves on levels that humanity has never seen before. And to me, this is my opinion. To me, this is all inserting the urgencies that much more towards humanity being ready and prepared to be packed up, prayed up, and ready to go up at any given time. Because as we get closer into this, there will be more world global events that will be horrifying on levels unknown to humanity in the degree of what I'm talking about. And even Jesus predicted those things that would occur, that there would be earthquakes in diverse places, and there would be this, and there would be that. And the disciples asked him, well, what sign shall it be of the end of the world, or the end of the ages? And he explained it to them, and that was over 2,000 years ago. Now, I've done seen part of this particular event that they're talking about right now pertaining to the eclipse. I haven't seen this, so this is new. But previous to this, you will see where they're talking about the Baltimore Bridge, and then you will see where an alert come up pertaining to an earthquake that has just recently been felt out on the East Coast, which I think it was either a 4.7 or 4.8, in which out here in this particular area, to feel a 2.7 to a 4.2 is almost on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis because of the New Madric Fault. Kind of like being out in the Sierra areas, west of the Sierras, towards them feeling earthquakes out there in California. The Earth is trying to tell us something. The cosmos in our galaxies is trying to tell us something if we will only listen. And it's not for entertainment purposes, my friends. And I don't mean to be the bad news bearer or somebody that's going to, bring horrifying news to people. But the fact of the matter is, God has appointed me to be a messenger. In the process of me being a messenger, I am to tell the truth about myself, about the events that's happening, about what God is leading me into, what God is instructing me to tell the people of, regardless whether they like it, whether they're entertained by it, whether they're frightened to death over it, in which that's not the purpose for me being a messenger, kind of like me telling the 43rd president about there's going to be a bloody road ahead, and also up in Kentucky in 2007, speaking in the degree that there was going to be major electrical disturbances. Electrical disturbances can happen in probably 1,000 different ways, probably ways that even TVA hadn't even thought of. I will compliment TVA by them putting out a special on the day of the bridge collapse pertaining to how that they are engineering new methods to create energy farms. And WPSD Channel 6 News is the one that originally put that on the air because of us being so, with them being so close and us being so close to TVA, Tennessee Valley electrical grid company over here. But it's almost like a day late and a dollar short. I hate to say it. That's the reason why that I continue to keep saying to people, no, we cannot stop the trajectory that planet Earth is on. We may could slow it down. We may could help ourselves economically wise. We may can help ourselves that way. We may can stop a lot of the pollution going up into the atmosphere. But this is one of the main points that I want to make right now towards this particular event of the eclipse. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else, because whenever the first one hit in 2017, that was after my brother had died, and that was after I had a confrontation with the Weakley County authorities up here pertaining to me caring, or us, my brother and I, caring about 3 little children that was across the road. But I actually drove up to Land Between the Lakes, which was making it a little bit closer to the zone of that particular eclipse, and watched the eclipse temporarily. That, if I'm not mistaken, I may have damaged my eyes because I didn't have the proper hardware on, and at the time that I thought it was okay to look, it wasn't okay to look. And I think I may have externally or internally damaged one of my eyes, and I hope that I didn't, but it's always a possibility that I could have had. And that's the reason why it is so crucial for people to wear the proper equipment to be able to look up into the sky. And I used to always think that it was okay to look at the eclipses, because this makes probably about, I guess, about the 4th or 5th one in my lifetime here in America. Some of them was just partial eclipses. Most of them was partial eclipses. But I always thought it was okay to look at an eclipse with oxygen settling goggles on, or welding lenses that you weld with. And they're saying now that even that is not recommended, because it was not designed for a certain IQ or whatever, not IQ, but the I don't forget now what they call it, that will not protect you from all those rays. But let's go on to and listen to this, because this is a part here that I haven't heard of yet, or haven't watched.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We all see the sun, but the important part is the shadow of the moon, right? The moon is about 1/400th the size of the sun. So the shadow of the moon that hits the surface of Earth, and that's what causes a total solar eclipse, that's pretty narrow. As you we heard in that last segment, only about 110 miles wide or so. So that's a pretty narrow width when you compare it to the size of Earth. So that's what makes it unusual to be in that path. Most people will not see the total solar eclipse.
Okay, and we have to remember safety here, of course. I have my glasses that picked up from the eyeglass store downstairs. They were giving out, it means paper. These aren't like high-tech things, but this part is high-tech. In fact, if you put them on, I can't see anything out of them, even with the bright lights of the studio shining on me. So what is the safest way to view it? And how do people know for sure if the glasses they have work?
Yeah, you're right. The outer part of the glasses is just thin cardboard, but the film in the middle that blocks out almost all of the light from the sun, just letting in a very, very small amount. So that's what makes it safe, so that you're able to look at the sun, experience the eclipse through your eclipse glasses without damaging your eyes by letting in all that extra light, and also the ultraviolet radiation.
Ultraviolet, that's the word I was looking for a while ago. The ultraviolet radiation that they claim welding helmets and goggles, settling in oxygen goggles, will not prevent all of it from coming into your eyes.
In addition to eclipse glasses, folks can use pinhole projectors. You may have heard about those, where you have a small piece of or a piece of cardboard, and you put a small hole in it, and then
That's what I done. I done the pinhole thing, and I didn't realize that I had done it at the wrong time.
Hole in it, and then the light goes through that small hole and projection in an image of the sun. But you're right, you want to be really aware of the safety aspects of it, so we don't have folks damaging their eyes.
And Kevin, we were working to confirm some information as we were speaking, because here in studio, we felt a shaking a few minutes ago, actually, when our Christine Romans was giving her economic report. And we're now learning that there was an earthquake. People could feel shaking in New York, in Boston, in Philadelphia. Our control room, we're told, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, it was a 4.8 earthquake that people experience. And it happened, the center of it was in Lebanon, New Jersey, we're told. I know that you have some expertise in this. Did you feel it where you are? And what should we be looking for as we learn more about it?
Right, I was just looking that up too. I don't think you should be expecting too much from this earthquake besides what you've already felt. We didn't, or at least I didn't feel it here in Buffalo. I think we're far enough away. But it looks like it was, like you said, almost a magnitude 5, about a 4.8. It looks like it was pretty close to the surface, only about less than a mile below the surface, which is probably why so many people felt it. But there might be some damage in the area around the epicenter. You'll probably be hearing more about that pretty soon. But
I'm not a New York native, but this is the first earthquake I've ever experienced. Is this normal in this region in New Jersey?
It is actually. The whole northeastern part of the United States has a lot of faults, basically cracks in the rocks from very old mountain forming events. And every now and then we get a little bit of movement along those faults, and that produces an earthquake. And so that's what you all felt today.
Well, Kevin Williams, we were lucky to have you with us and helping us with 2 different stories today. Really appreciate it. Hope you have a good weekend. Up next here on Ana Cabrera Reports, President Biden is heading to Baltimore today to survey the damage from that deadly bridge collapse. The head of the Army Corps of Engineers will join us on the efforts to reopen the port. Plus, what happens if a key group of voters in battleground Michigan...
All right, let's go forward here.
Hundred 959 39.
Welcome back. In just a few hours, President Biden heads to Baltimore to survey the damage from the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse. He'll meet with families of those 6 workers killed and get an update on the federal response. The Army Corps of Engineers is still working to try to clear the thousands of tons of underwater wreckage, and they hope to get the port up and running by the end of May. NBC's George Solis is live in Baltimore for us. George, walk us through the president's visit there today. What can we expect?
Yeah, good morning, Anna. Sort of the key thing here is that consoler in chief role that he's going to play today, meeting with the family members of those men who died on that bridge. Here behind me, a memorial that's been growing for those workers. You can see some of the flags there. So for the countries these men were from: Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. Really an important takeaway here as he meets with these members who have lost so much and are still awaiting answers. Earlier this morning, Anna, I actually spoke with one of the survivors of the Key Bridge incident, Julio Cervantes. He's actually out of bed now. Last week I spoke with his wife, who said he had suffered a chest injury. Good to report that he's actually up and walking right now. The family has asked for privacy and is not speaking at this time, but just sort of that takeaway. And the family did lose other members in that collapse. And so for them, this has been a very emotional time. But again, the president here will not only meet with them, but he'll also get a briefing from the Army Corps of Engineers, from the Coast Guard. He's also going to survey that damage for the first time, getting a good look at some of the aftermath after the Dolly struck the bridge. And he's going to be surrounded by a complement of officials here. We expect Secretary Pete Buttigieg to be along with him, as well as Senator Chris Van Hollen, Senator Ben Cardin, as well as the mayor and Governor Wes Moore, Anna.
And the president has promised to pay for the rebuild, which has drawn some pushback from congressional Republicans. Where does that stand?
And that's to be expected. One of the things that we've heard from the Office of Management and Budget letter
is experiencing some pushback. Where does that stand? This is appalling to me, that I felt like was probably going to happen, and that's the reason why that I said that anybody that was criticizing what the United States government had to do for its people or was opposed to it needed to be fired, especially those working for the will of the people. But it just goes to show you how intensely divided and ruined that this country has become because of these delays that now we are living in pre-millennial state, that basically we should have already been taken out of here. The Christians should have had, and leaving those that didn't have a belief in Christ, leaving those that refused to live a godly life or try to live a godly life here in despair of their own iniquities. Because of the resistance movement that began in 1989 right here in Northwest Tennessee, it has put not just the American people, but the world in behind the 8 ball.
Letter. They are saying, quote, "We are asking Congress to join us in demonstrating our commitment to aid and recovery efforts." And one of the things they immediately did was approve $60 million in emergency relief funds. We also know that they've established that unified command, which has been putting out information and videos that we've seen of some of the divers even going into the water right now. And they've approved low-interest disaster loans, basically ways to compensate some of these families and people impacted by the fact that that bridge is no longer there. So that is going to be sort of the next phase of this, of course, as they not only work to reopen the port and some of the channels to get boats back through there. But again, I think the thing that a lot of people are focused on today is that visit that the president is going to have with those family members, those 6 individuals who are still to this day waiting for answers about their loved ones, Anna.
Yes, I'm still missing. George Solis, thank you very much. And joining us now from the White House is U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Lieutenant General Scott Spellman. General, thanks for being here. What is the biggest challenge facing your teams right now?
Yeah, Anna, first I want to say thank you for having us on your program this morning. Before we talk about our number one challenge, I want to say all of us are forever mindful that of President Biden and Governor Moore's number one priority, and that is to help locate the missing 4 workers and return them to their loved ones. We are in the Corps of Engineers working alongside some very talented teammates in the United States Navy, certainly the United States Coast Guard, incredible first responders from the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland. We've just come to the collective assessment that we have to start moving more and heavier debris to help find those missing workers and reopen this strategic port for the nation. We've had over 51 divers in the water over the past 9 days. We've had multiple of our technical tools, our LiDAR, our sonar, our cameras, all over the structure, and it's our opinion now that we can do more work concurrently than sequentially, as I have been describing to date. So the challenge right now is to reopen what we are calling a limited access channel. That channel will be 280 feet wide by 35 foot deep. And what that will allow is the barge container service that runs between Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Norfolk. These are very large barges. They hold upwards of 300 to 400 of the 40-foot containers. But that will allow the container service to get started again in the Port of Baltimore. It will also allow a large number of the roll-on, roll-off vessels that bring imported automobiles into Baltimore and export farm equipment. So we believe we will have the limited access channel open by the end of this month, by the end of April, and simultaneously we will go to work on all of the other pieces of bridge and the concrete that is in the river. Over 20,000 tons of steel and over 30,000 tons of concrete that we have to go to work on.
Wow, so you just talked about how grueling this process is, and thank you so much for the update and really taking through those developments in the timeline here. Lieutenant General Scott Spellman, really appreciate your time. Sorry to cut it short. We're following some breaking news today in the tri-state area. A 4.7 magnitude earthquake shaking New Jersey, with the epicenter, we're told, in Lebanon, New Jersey. And I want to show you the map from the U.S. Geological Survey of where people report feeling it. New Jersey, New York, all the way up into New England. And our Katie Turr felt it at a coffee shop. She's joining us by phone right now. Katie, describe what you experienced.
I'm laughing because in New York City, when you feel the rumble.
See what I'm saying about people being entertained? She's laughing. In which that's the, I guess, the modern way of throwing things off and not really being overly concerned about these events, is that people kind of, oh wow, wasn't that something? You know, like it was an experience in a good way. Right now, they may be thinking that these are all experiences in a good way, because it's a way of throwing things off in not looking at the severity of what's actually happening. But anytime you displace it, the weight loads, the way that these bigger cities have done, not just in America, but all over the world, anytime you're draining masses, amounts of precious resources out of the ground pertaining to oil, gas, and also water pertaining to the necessities that the Homo sapiens need to live off of, you are creating these mass vacuum holes in underneath our feet, that whenever things shift, they don't just shift a little bit, they shift a lot. And as I have tried to explain in the process of that oil, that our planet is basically a living organism that is constantly shifting and moving and twisting, because if the earth was not glued together that way, it would be similar towards building a high-rise that didn't have flexibility joints in each floor, to the point that basically once the building ever did shift, let's say 6 inches because of a hard wind, the building would basically break in half and it would fall and hit the ground, and you'd have a lot of casualties. Same way with the earth. If the earth was just one big massive rock, at any given time, it could very well crack and basically shatter, and one side of the planet Earth would go in one direction and the other side of the Earth would go into the other direction, in addition to all the death and destruction that would happen on account of that. Because the way that our Earth is designed, it's kind of glued together. What glues it together is the oil and all the mass crevices that's underneath our feet that we can't see. The aqua aquifers up underneath our ground, up underneath our feet, where all the water and stuff flows back and forth. These are all elements that helps the grand design that God designed the planet Earth to basically live originally unsustainable, to where it would be sustainable forever. That was the right word that I was looking for. Because of what humanity is now doing to the planet Earth, it is no longer looked upon as being a self-sustainable Earth, but now it's looked upon as an Earth that's basically dying. And it's dying right below our feet. And these events that we're seeing, in which I disagree with the individual a while ago that they was interviewing, that said, whenever they was talking about the sun, and he mixed the other story together with the sun and the earthquake, that he said that out west, that there was there was prone of seeing lots of disturbances regarding earthquakes out west. And I totally disagree with that, because there's actually bigger platelets out west on the Atlantic side that help to secure the areas of not shifting as much as the middle of the country, say like where we're at here in Northwest Tennessee, the New Madrid Fault area, or in other fault line areas in America, much less those that's all over the world, that now scientists have discovered the intensity of. But anytime you are steadily using up precious resources from the earth, and you're not replacing those resources with other things, and anytime you're adding weight distributions in areas that was not accustomed to having that type of weight distribution in that particular area, it is literally causing a lot of your coastal line areas of the cities to be sinking. Just like the town of Mexico, the city of Mexico, in the country of Mexico. Their city is literally sinking every year. And it's happening on a slow level to where you can't really feel it unless there is a slippage of one of the platelets that gives way all of a sudden. Because the oil is no longer there, that helps to eliminate the friction and also make it more slippery, to the degree that one platelet will now slide gently, either in an upward motion or a downward motion, because the oil is no longer there that's been used up or drained. Now, whenever it does slip, it slips harshly. Also, the oil was put there for a heat shield to be able to protect the outer layers of the earth pertaining to the center of the earth being nothing but a ball of fire that they call the mantle of the center of the earth. Usually, every time there's an earthquake, either before or after, if you get to noticing, there was and will be a volcano eruption. Sometimes a lot of the volcano eruptions happens under the oceans, to the degree that we actually don't see them or feel them pertaining to the eruptions. But usually it's a release of pressure that basically uses these volcano, I'm going to call them valves, to be able to release the pressure from the planet Earth that has to spew out. And some of them spews out above the ground, and most of them spew out below the ground. But basically what we're doing, we're shrinking the planet Earth. And we are doing this to ourselves by using up all the precious resources and not replacing those resources with something that should have been filling up those craters and those crevices up underneath our feet. And now we're seeing the repercussions of that. Even Christ predicted that would happen in the last days, for there would be earthquakes in diverse places that will only intensify as we shall see the days approaching, that no flesh shall be saved here upon to the planet Earth. And I know that sounds abrupt. I know that sounds scary. I know that sounds intense. But my friends, we should not be where we are right now pertaining to the church society upon the planet that should have already been eliminated or taken out from the planet, pertaining to all the wickedness and all the barbariness and the sin and just basically evil that has formigated itself in the past 30 plus years, that now we're feeling the effects of all over the world. And if we don't feel the effects of it in one way, we're feeling the effects of it in another way. And what frightens me about the crosshairs of the X marks the spot right above from where I live, give or take about maybe an hour and a half, is that X, I don't think was coincidental. A matter of fact, I don't look at nothing towards it being just a coincident thing. I think everything that occurs for a reason. Now, whether or not it's for a good reason or a bad reason, sometimes bad things can happen that will have good effects. Sometimes good reasons can happen that we think are good that will actually be bad. But the bottom line is this: we are reaching a very, very pivotal point in history pertaining to humanity, to where there is no security nowhere, either above the planet, below the planet, or up into the upper atmosphere, pertaining to the ozone layer that we know we have damaged tremendously. And the point that I was trying to make a while ago towards everybody wanting to rush to see the eclipse, by doing that, it is going to be similar towards another vacation of X amount of automobiles, X amount of transportation, planes and etc., moving in different directions, using up that much more resources and distributing that many more carbons up into the atmosphere. Now you can say, well, you're just a party pooper. Well, if that's what you want to think, that's fine. But I'm responsible of telling that in which what God has showed me to tell in preparing people for the inedible. And the bottom line is this, and I'll continue to say this to the day that I die: the founder of the Windmill Ministries missions did not fail the ministry, nor did the ministry fail the people, but rather it was the other way around. It was the people that didn't grab a hold in supporting the founder of the Windmill Ministries that actually failed the ministry. The people failed the ministry. The founder did not fail the ministry. And the ministry has not failed the people, because the ministry continues to put out warnings and advisories again and again and again that some people misinterpret and thinks that they're some sort of threats. And they're not threats. I promise you, I do not want to threaten anybody or nobody that I either know or that I don't know, because that would not be a godly characteristic towards Christ saying, love thy enemies and turn thy cheek and be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. If a person does not fit under that pretense, then they need to re-examine their lives and just exactly what type of relationship that they have with God. Now, there's no doubt, sometimes there are circumstances that comes up that good people has to do bad things. And this old cliche that has been taught over here in America, that only bad things happen to bad people, is a bunch of malarkey. Because if you'll get to looking and analyzing Most of the prophets in the Bible, either in the Old Bible or the New Bible, suffered tremendously because they was actually targeted. They had a big X on the back of their backs, and Satan was trying to do any and everything to them towards destroying their lives. That way their purpose would not be fulfilled. I can honestly say that that's what's occurred in my particular life. Now, some of these occurrences I brought up onto myself because I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing, and in some cases I was actually running from God rather than working with God. And if that be the case in most people's lives, they will become a very miserable human being if they are running away from God or against God versus working with God. But all these signs upon to the planet, regardless whether it's the signs of this or the signs of that, you know, we've seen whales beaching themselves. We've seen birds fall out of the sky. We've seen craters open up pertaining to the thermofrost that's melting. We have seen things that's going on today that are only going to intensify as we get closer and closer to the end of time. And I promise you, the end of time is coming. I know people have heard that over here in America for years and years and years. Oh, the end of time is coming. The end of time is coming. Oh, it's the end. It's the end time message. It's the end. It's the end. No, this is literally the end. The end of civilization as we know it, that we have brought upon to ourselves. Either out of ignorances, the oil tycoon industries have done it out of greed, or our meteorologists and our scientists did not raise a red flag in telling the people the truth about what we're doing to ourselves. We're poisoning our water, we're poisoning our air, we're cutting down all the trees. I could go on and on. The reefs and the oceans are dying, which is basically the very lungs of our society. And once these things start happening, forever action is a reaction, and now we're starting to see the reactions that will only intensify. That will only intensify as you shall tangibly see the days approaching, that no flesh shall be saved, was Christ's warnings, was Jesus Christ's advisories to the planet. And it goes on in that same verse to say, but because of the elect's sake, which are God's chosen people, those days would be shortened pertaining to the second coming of Christ. That will be whenever God comes back and resurrects all those who are living as well as those who have died before us in a great resurrection called the second coming of Christ. And whenever that occurs, basically teetotal absolute hell busts loose on the planet Earth to the degree that, my friends, you do not, I promise you, you will not desire to want to live on the planet Earth, regardless of what continent that you're living on, whenever that occurs.
Building, you normally write it off as a big truck going by or a subway, but I was in a local coffee shop and I saw the whole bar start shaking, and why, honey, my daughter's saying goodbye to me, sorry. I felt the whole bar shake, and I asked the lady behind the counter, and she said, oh, it's a truck, and I kind of wrote it off, and then I looked down at my phone and realized it was an earthquake, and it was definitely a little bit more violent than we normally feel with a large truck going by or a subway. I mean, violent in relative terms, that nothing fell off the counters, nothing fell off the ceiling. I'm from Los Angeles, so I'm used to relatively big earthquakes where things fall apart, freeways crumble, etc. So this was definitely more minor. But here in New York City, we're not used to it. We're not used to the ground shaking for any other reason beyond the subway or a large truck. So when I walked outside, people were out of their houses, on the street, looking at each other, talking about how the building was shaking, asking if people were okay, talking about how it really freaked them out, just kind of unsure of what exactly went down. My daughter was in the kitchen at my house yelling, "What is that? Is it a big truck?" So it was definitely an unusual experience for people here in New York.
Neil deGrasse Tyson posted on social media. He felt it, and he thought it was about 20 seconds by his count. I'm curious if there was any kind of reaction among the people in that coffee shop. Well, what?
No,
you mentioned what went through your
so
mind.
amazing.
no reaction?
Nobody flinched. I mean, I said, "Why is the bar shaking?" And the answer of "it must be a truck" was, accepted by everybody. And then when I walked back in to say, "No, actually, it was an earthquake," then everyone reacted and said, "Yeah, that did feel different. It felt strange." And there was a bit of a chuckle around the room because while it was unusual for New York, it wasn't strong enough to knock anything over. And I think it was a kind of a unique experience for people. We're used to seeing this happen in California or, overseas. Not so much here. It's kind of a, we deal with other crises here in New York City, not the ones that shake the ground beneath us, literally. So I think the people felt like, it was kind of an interesting experience. I saw on social media that the Empire State Building posted, "I am fine," which is good news.
And again, we are told the epicenter was Lebanon, New Jersey, what is now being determined to be a 4.7 earthquake centered there in New Jersey. The governor of New York says that it was felt throughout New York. My team, she writes, is assessing impacts and any damage that may have occurred, and we will update the public throughout the day. At this point, we have no word of any damage that has occurred, but so many people felt it. And as Katie Tur was describing, I certainly experienced a similar feeling, which is, was that a truck that just went by? Was that the subway? Would we feel that here at 30 Rock? I'm up on the fourth floor. And so a lot of people are asking those questions. What just happened? We have the mayor now of Lebanon, New Jersey, joining us by phone again. Lebanon, New Jersey, the epicenter of this earthquake. James Pittenger, Mayor Pittenger, thank you so much for taking the time. Talk to us about what you experienced there at the epicenter.
I'm going to weigh in here real quick. There's consequences. As Einstein used to teach, forever action is a reaction. There's consequences in what the Western world done over here that Putin uses the phrase towards being cheated, okay? And looking at it from his perspective, I can understand the reason why that the oligarchs, the tyrants over there, look at it towards them being cheated. But it wasn't just Russia that got cheated, but the whole planet got cheated because of the delays, because of the resistance movement that Northwest Tennessee is a part of. I can't explain that. I cannot put that out in a stronger detail form other than saying it towards being a straight shooter, that there was consequences. And the consequences is not just the fact that you have delayed the second coming pertaining to the rapture, but you have actually brought forth all these other problems now that we're just now beginning to acknowledge, similar towards the bridge falling, that in 1988, whenever the 9 tapes went to the White House pertaining to the latter part of Ronald Reagan's administration, the big, humongous, super freightliners did not exist to the level of the size that they are today. Because the freightliners have become so huge, because there's so many more people on the planet in distributing goods, precious resources from one country to another, the bridge columns are behind times towards the safety features that should have been designed in those columns, that now today, the bridges that get built, those safety features are designed into those columns and into those bridges. That way, if something like that was to occur, it would not be so catastrophic. I could not tell you the millions, not thousands, but millions of bridges all over the world that have the same similar type features as the Baltimore Bridge did, to the degree that if a major freightliner was to hit it, it would be absolutely catastrophic to that whole region. It would be devastating to thousands, if not millions of people's lives. That is how intertwined that we are now today towards us depending upon each other, in the degree that if one little boo-boo happens, and it don't matter if it's a man-made boo-boo, such as President Putin going to war with Ukrainians, or what's going on right now over in the Holy Land, one little boo-boo can cause devastation on unproportionally events that can have a ripple effect all over the planet. Just like whenever the oil industry typhoons raised the price of oil to the degree that we was paying some places $7, $8, $10 a gallon for fuel out of the pump. That had a ripple effect with our economy, not just here in America, but all over the world. Whenever President Putin decided to blow up a dam or a levee that flooded thousands and thousands of acres over in the Ukrainian area that ordinarily agriculture growed wheat, that the Ukrainian people provided about a third of the wheat all over the world, now you have massive starvation in countries like Africa because they can't afford to pay for the wheat. One reaction requires another reaction. We are so intricately connected to each other today on every level imaginable, all the way down to cutting down a tree, all the way to bulldozing down a tree. That really irritates me to no end whenever I see farmers around here trying to grab up an extra quarter of an acre or an extra half an acre or an extra acre or two, that if they was to bulldoze all these trees down, now they have predominant agriculture farming abilities to be able to plant and produce more beans or corn or whatever that they're planting. And it really irritates me to see all the trees knocked down in comparison to me growing up now in Northwest Tennessee to the way it used to be back whenever I was just a child growing up, because I can remember these things. God has given me a real good memory whenever it comes to remembering things, of how things used to be and how all grown up it was with the forestry and stuff, that if we was to ever have a massive earthquake today pertaining to the New Madrick Fault, if it was on the same intensity level that happened in 1811, 1812, whenever it created Reelfoot Lake, whenever the Mississippi basically run backwards for 3 days and 3 nights and filling up that big crevice, if we was to have just that same earthquake today on that same level, which I think was on a high 8 or a low 9, it would be devastating to places like St. Louis, Memphis, New Orleans. They would feel the effects. They may not feel the effects directly towards an actual earthquake, but it could have an effect upon the flow of the mighty Mississippi. Right up where I live, give or take about 50 miles, there's a place that separates between Tennessee and Kentucky, that goes halfway into the channel of the Mississippi, that's called the Cat's Corner. That's this large, humongous turn that barges has to go sideways and then go back north and then go back south again. Let's say that whole area right there was to break loose over the New Madrick Fault, and let's say there was just now one channel traveling down the mighty Mississippi. Nothing to slow it down, nothing for a breakaway. Do you realize how quickly that the mighty Mississippi would get low? Because the water flow would be maybe 2, 3, maybe 5 miles an hour faster than what it is right now. That if that Cat's Corner or or whatever they call it right there. It's not Cat's Corner. It's called something else. I've forgotten now the proper name of it. But if that was to give away to the point that now you no longer had a breakaway or a break that slowed down the flow of the Mississippi River, the Mississippi River wouldn't just get low a little bit. It would get low quickly, and it would get low a lot, depending upon the rain measure of how much moisture was falling and filling up all the other contributaries and waterways and rivers and lakes and etc. around it. Every action creates a reaction. We are seeing the consequences of these things, regardless whether it's a barge running into a bridge, regardless whether seeing these freaky things going on above our heads, knowing that there's certain stars out there that are in alignment towards hitting planet Earth. And that's just the things that NOAA and NASA can see, not counting the things that they cannot see, pertaining to the star of Wormwood, pertaining to ending civilization as we know it. Let's listen to what the mayor has to say about his experience in this particular event.
The center.
Yes, quite frankly, just still a little shaken up here. I was working from home today and had some work going on outside my house, and I'm like, what the heck did those guys do? Because everything just started falling off the shelves, and it just got a pretty big rattle and a pretty big scare. My dog ran for cover. It was the craziest thing I've ever experienced.
And so things actually fell off the shelves at your place. What other damage are you learning of in your area?
We're just doing an assessment now. I haven't heard of any significant damage right now. So I was just talking to our borough hall. So they're right now going into the process of seeing if there's any other damage. And we do have a reservoir right in our backyard too. So there's some concern with that as well. So.
Okay, and we're just getting another update. It is back to being a 4.8 earthquake, the official word from the U.S. Geological Survey. Mayor, you said it shook you up, literally. Have you experienced this before? We know earthquakes may be super common.
Yeah, never. I've lived here for 30 years, and I've never experienced anything like that. I had no idea what it was. Like I said, having some work done at the house, so I thought that they had hit something outside or did something, because it literally shook the walls and knocked stuff off the shelves. So it was quite a, just a crazy experience.
How long did it last for you?
I was just a couple seconds. It was over. It didn't seem to last that long at all.
And what fell off the shelves? Were they dishes? Are you in a situation now where you're in full cleanup mode?
Oh, no. It was more just stuff in the laundry room shelves, the detergent, and stuff in my garage fell off. Actually, I was going to send whoever called me originally, I have a Ring video down there with it rattled and stuff falling off.
And now what's your plan at this point? Will you be assessing the community and whether there is any damage that occurred?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Trying to go through that now, activating our OEM and seeing if we need to do anything.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Mayor James Pittinger from Lebanon, New Jersey, again, where the epicenter of this 4.8 earthquake was felt. Thank you very much for joining.
Look right there in the span, give or take maybe 35, 40 miles deep, maybe 20 miles wide, just in that one area. Look at all the concrete, asphalt, and steel that has been shuffled around pertaining to humanity, that has taken the weight distribution and put it all in one massive area that did not originally have all that. So we have taken the abnormal and tried to define it as it being normal, but according to the planet, there's nothing normal about having that much weight, that much steel, that much concrete, that many people in that one confining area. These are the areas that scientists, geographics, other forms of scientific research has obviously not put into play regarding how precious that our planet Earth is. It is very sensitive. And whenever you have massive amounts of trees being cut down in the rainforest of South America, and you have all this other stuff going on pertaining to the moving parts, you can take your refrigerator. I use this as an example a lot of times, and there's probably millions of other examples that I could use. But you can take your refrigerator and put your hand on the motor that actually creates the refrigerant that keeps everything cool in your icebox. And once that pump kicks on, you got little pistons in there that's working, that's moving oil as well as Freon. Within a matter of seconds, you can no longer hold your hand on the back of that motor. Why is that? Because moving parts creates friction. We know that because if you drain all the oil out of your automobile, it won't take long for your pistons and your upper bearings and your camshaft and your crankshaft and everything else to lock up. Friction creates heat. Heat, by human consumption, is adding to global warming that so many people was in denial of for so many years, that even to this day, as far as I know, Donald Trump is still a climate denier, a global climate denier. And for people to deny that human consumption and what we're doing to the planet,
gonna just take a quick break and be right back.
Is absolutely, it's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre in people thinking that the planet's still flat, knowing that the planet isn't flat, or thinking that the moon is made out of cheese, knowing that the moon isn't made out of cheese. People are not willing to advance. People are not willing to grow. People are not willing to evolve. And because of it, there's consequences. And now we're starting to see the consequences after 30 plus years of this resistance movement that began right here in Northwest Tennessee pertaining to the Windmill Ministries missions.
New Jersey. Here's the map of the U.S. Geological Survey of where people report feeling it. New Jersey, New York, all the way up into New England. We know Philly, as well as parts of Connecticut.
What is there, something like 60 million people that live up in that area? Of course, that's spread out a little bit more. But, I mean, that's a lot of cars. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of abnormal things that normally did not exist 200, 300, 400 years ago, but now do.
Joining us now by phone is our Antonia Hilton, who felt the quake from her apartment in Brooklyn, New York. So, Antonia, tell us what you experienced.
Hey, Anna. I was sitting in my living room getting ready for some work calls, and suddenly in my I'm in a pretty old sort of townhome style, brownstone, the classic Brooklyn building, and everything started to shake. I heard some pretty terrifying noises from our building staircase, from the unit below me, and then just moments later started to hear screams out on the street. There are some older buildings just down the road from me, and some of the tenants went flooding out onto the avenue right in front of me and were in a bit of a panic. They described to me saying that their stairs were swaying, that they were very frightened as they were leaving their buildings. Some of them are still just resting outside, afraid to go back indoors. I live right near a playground, too, in the South Williamsburg area. I could hear kids reacting, clearly very confused and frightened. I don't think most of us here in New York City are used to this. This is certainly my first earthquake in this area of the country. And so people are a bit shaken up here. I can see people still on the street just kind of collecting their...
Now, you'll have some preachers that'll say, well, this is a God thing. This is a God thing. This don't have nothing to do with God. This has to do with humanity and what we're doing to ourselves. We have brought this upon to ourselves. Like I said, this delay, this 30-year delay, 30-year plus year delay of where the world should be pertaining to a great revival, pertaining to seeing the meek inheriting the earth, pertaining to seeing peace and utopia, has been brought upon by a resistance movement that began in the White House in 1988 when 9 tapes circulated to the White House during Ronald Reagan's administration. I cannot bear the importance of this, the significance of this, of what that certain people have done. They have jeopardized a great deal of normalcy to the point that now we're feeling and seeing the consequences on every level.
Before they step back inside and try to continue on. I mean, thankfully.
But now you try to explain that to some of these people in Weakland County or Obion County, over there in Kenton, Tennessee, or up there in Dresden, Tennessee. You try to explain that to those judges and those attorneys and some of these preachers around here and some of these other people that's supposed to be in charge of people's lives. You try to explain that to them, and it'll be like the deer in the headlight look. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, yeah, you do. If you just put a little thought into it, you know exactly what has occurred. You know exactly why it occurred. You know exactly what humanity was trying to get away with. And fortunately, I have lived through each and every battle. Do I have battle scars on account of the battles? Absolutely. But I've lived through it to the degree that now I can tell my side of the story, and I can tell it promptly and professionally in explaining it to the people. Now, it's up to the people whether or not they want to believe it, accept it, or they don't want to believe it, or they don't want to accept it. That will be up to them. All I can do is put the information out there, kind of like the weather forecaster. If there's inclement weather around you, all he can do is put out, there's a tornado spotted at this particular area, seek shelter immediately. Now, if you don't want to seek shelter, that'll be up to you. But he's done his part. He put the word out.
I'm not seeing major damage here, but it sounds like internally in a couple of the older buildings in this area, there may be a bit of trouble. And so, we're just trying to assess kind of what's happened. There'll
be ceilings with cracks. There'll be sheetrocks that's broken. Chandeliers that's probably fallen, stuff that's fallen off of people's walls, etc., etc. There will be damages because of that.
It's one part of the city, but
you don't have that many people confined in that confinement and think that there's not. That would be, especially on that scale, 4.8.
Boy, are people in shock.
Well, and to hear that there were those scary noises coming from the staircase, it does certainly sound like people there in Brooklyn in your apartment building had a different experience than those in other parts of the city. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I do want to note that the former governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, just tweeted a few moments ago that his entire house shook for about 25 seconds or so. This was in Medham, New Jersey, where he is, he says. And he wrote, did we just have an earthquake? I think that is the question so many people have been asking in the last half hour or so since this happened is, did I just feel what I thought I felt? And in fact, some people in Philadelphia have been calling emergency services trying to ask that question. Philadelphia police saying, we are aware of multiple reports of seismic activity across the city. Unless you are reporting an emergency, please do not call 911. So important to keep those emergency lines open for those who really, really need help. Also joining us right now by phone is NBC News meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Michelle, this is an experience so many of us haven't felt before.
I know, yes, and it's alarming when you feel this. I have so many text messages coming in, asking was it an earthquake. I just felt that, and it is a different feeling. It's almost like a swaying when you feel an earthquake. I forget the last one that we had, but I remember that feeling distinctly. It doesn't feel like a shake. It feels like a sway, and that's what we felt today. So this was a 4.8 on the Richter scale earthquake. It was 2 miles from Tewksbury, New Jersey, and just so alarming. I live in Bucks County. My husband called me. He thought he was outside, the neighbor was outside. He thought something exploded in the basement, that it was that much of a feeling.
But it's alarming how far out you can feel it. You're getting text messages from New York City, from New Jersey. I have a niece in Voorhees, New Jersey, who felt it there. But the actual epicenter was just 2 miles from Tewksbury, New Jersey. So when you feel a 4.8 earthquake, especially in this area, we're not used to it. And it just, no pun intended, it does shake you up.
And as it turns out, this is not the first quake to rumble the tri-state area this year.
Right.
There was a small earthquake in January, a magnitude 1.7 earthquake that struck near Astoria, Queens, according to the USGS. And so a lot of people didn't feel that one. This was a 4.8, according to the USGS. So we all felt it. Here, inside 30 Rock, it was a shaking. It felt like, you could feel it, but we were on air at the time. I don't think viewers at home noticed the camera shaking or anything. It wasn't dramatic. That being said, where the epicenter was near Lebanon, New Jersey, we talked to the mayor and he said stuff was falling off the shelves at his house and that his dog went berserk because they felt it in a big way. Michelle, do you have a sense of the fault lines in the Northeast that remain hidden until something like this happens?
Well, yeah, so there are absolutely fault lines there. And what it is you can almost envision two dinner plates next to each other. And when you have that shifting of these plates, you're going to feel that sway. And to your point, when my husband called me, it's funny that the animals can feel it because my dog was going crazy and still even afterwards was. But when you have a 4.8, I mean, if you look at the Richter scale, you have 0.1, you're not going to feel anything. 2, maybe you feel it's a small quake. Most people won't feel it. By 4, you can cause damage, as you said, things falling off shelves right near the epicenter, so right near Lebanon, right near Tewksbury. And it is the same as a small fission bomb. So this is a pretty big quake for our area, especially not being used to it, especially not being used to that feeling of that swaying. So when you have those plates overlapping each other, you're certainly going to feel that. Now, what's going to be interesting over the next couple of hours, and we'll have to talk to a seismologist, and we'll do that. We'll do that over the next couple of hours to see what happens afterwards, because usually these don't happen alone. There's going to be, some aftermath. So it'll be interesting what happens over the next couple of hours.
Yeah, and that's important to note, Michelle Grossman. Thank you so much. As she discussed, there could be aftershocks, so everybody just prepare for that. I do want to note that the governor of New Jersey, Governor Murphy, also just put out a post saying they've activated the Emergency Operations Center and reminding people, please do not call 911 unless you do have an emergency. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you for being here. I'm Ana Cabrera reporting from New York. Jose Diaz-Balart picks up our coverage right now.
Of minutes, a 4.8 magnitude earthquake in New Jersey. It was centered in New Jersey, rattled residents from Philadelphia all the way up to Boston. Any injuries as a result of the quake are unknown at this time. In New York City, where it was felt pretty intensely, Governor Kathy Hochul said her team is assessing impacts and any damage that may have occurred. I want to dip into WNBC or affiliate coverage there in New York for a moment. Let's listen in.
This morning in the area of Tewksbury, New Jersey. Now, what we're waiting for is that secondary information about how shallow or how deep this earthquake was, because certainly it was felt far to the east, far to the north, to the south and southwest around our area, and of course, certainly within the 5 boroughs of New York. As we take a look at the last recorded earthquake in New Jersey, it was White House Station, and it was a light quake on March 14th. That shows you how often we feel some sort of earthquakes in the tri-state area with little to no effect and certainly no headlines. What makes this different is this is a rather strong earthquake for our area. We are going to continue to get you information, but keep in mind, I want to remind you, 2.5 to 5.4 earthquakes are often felt but rarely cause major damage, typically only minor damage. The estimated number of earthquakes between a 2.5 and a 5.4 are 500,000 a year. So it gives you an idea. This is not exceptional when you look at this number or this occurrence from a global standpoint, but certainly in our area, as you can see, an emergency reminder going off right now from New York City saying residents are advised to remain indoors. Call 911 if injured. We don't anticipate that that is the case for most, but we're keeping an eye open on all the situations around the tri-state, and we'll try and get that information on how deep this earthquake was and more technical information for you as we dispatch crews to New Jersey and also get more seismic information as well. We'll send it back to you.
Okay, Dave, thank you. We just got that alert on our phones. I think most of you did, urging people to stay indoors at this point. Again, no major impacts from this earthquake, a magnitude 4.8 earthquake as of now. But again, that emergency alert asking people to remain indoors at this time. Let's go to News 4's Andrew Siff. He is live at the Office of Emergency Management in downtown Brooklyn with what we are learning from officials there.
Now keep in mind, Tokyo, I think it was Tokyo over in Japan, recently just got to being hit by an earthquake. I think it was 7.8 or 8 point something. It was big enough that it toppled buildings. I don't know how many people it injured. I don't know how many people that it killed. Yes, they are more acquainted with that type of activity over there, kind of like out west in California. But if you'll start paying attention globally to the world, usually if there's one earthquake over here, there'll be another earthquake over there. Usually if there's a volcano that erupts over here, that'll usually cause an earthquake. Or you can start looking, and whenever there's a major earthquake, usually what follows, and you may not see it, it may be on the ocean, usually there'll be an eruption of volcano. That was
Despite
spew
the
out.
fact that virtually every neighborhood felt this earthquake. So at the moment, they're breathing a sigh of relief here. We can also tell you that just one representative sample from what principals are messaging parents is, yes, we felt it at the school. We're back in and learning. Stop calling the school. Phones are ringing off the hook. So that's sort of a real-time sense of moment by moment what's going on. Everyone's telling everyone that they felt the earthquake. It was a notable earthquake, but at the moment, it is not one that registered any damage. We'll show you right behind us here. This is Watch Command. They've assembled representatives from various agencies as well as emergency management techs themselves, monitoring on video screens, getting real-time data, noting responses, and designating whether there are any other agencies like the fire department, like Con Edison, anyone that needs to respond. But as we indicated, so far there are no reports of power outages, no reports of damage across the city, but virtually every neighborhood felt it. We can tell you that Mayor Eric Adams is on his way here to emergency management. He's planning to brief the city at noon. We understand that Governor Hochul will join the briefing remotely from Albany, so that's the level at which this is being taken very seriously at both city and state levels. But at the moment, no emergency response to speak of. That can obviously change because this was so vastly spread out. There may be ultimately some kinds of damage reports or emergencies that they're not aware of yet. But so far, not ringing off the hook in terms of an emergency. We did hear the warning tone that you all heard right around 11 a.m., so that's been signaled from here as well. But for now, they're monitoring it minute by minute without an emergency response.
Especially due to the fact of the Baltimore Bridge falling, and you got so many other older bridges around in that area. They may not be that big, they may not be near that big, but they're still older bridges that was not developed for hurricane-proof architectural designs. So there's lots of concerns that should be concerned here, especially whenever you're dealing with this massive amount of people.
This is pretty large for the East Coast. This isn't something typical. We haven't been geologically active.
Something that was not typical, clearly. It was felt in New York City and in many areas of the tri-state area. I want to bring in NBC News weather producer Catherine Prokiv in Midtown New York. So, Catherine, what do we know as of right now? 4.8 on the scale is rather high.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. So I'm in West Midtown. I did feel the earthquake from my apartment on the 25th floor. Everything kind of shook there, for a few minutes. And my sister, you know, she noticed that we kind of confirmed with each other, and then obviously all of the reports started coming in. So we are sitting at a 4.8 magnitude, and just sent around to the NBC Climate Unit just some history here for perspective. We heard the seismologist say a 4.8 magnitude is pretty, you know, high up there for this region. New Jersey, by the way, is no stranger to earthquakes. We've got the Ramapo Fault nearby. That's often where these quakes occur. But again, it's the magnitude. So we'll see. The USGS often can revise up and down. It's already kind of gone down to 4.7, back up to a 4.8. But this is the third strongest earthquake in New Jersey history that I could find through research. NewJersey.gov has a nice historical page out there for people to reference. And the only other two stronger ones were nearly 250 years ago in the late 1700s when a 5.2 and a 5.3 magnitude earthquake occurred.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is unusual, although, as you very well point out, this is an area that has some faults and fault lines under it, the whole tri-state area. And I'm thinking back to 2011, August, I think it was, in 2011, when I happened to be in Washington, D.C., when an earthquake there was felt. It was, I think, about 80 miles southwest of D.C. at the time, but that was 5.8 back then. I remember that the Washington Monument was closed for a couple of years as a consequence of that. No injuries, but there were some structural damages, including to the National Cathedral. So I'm just wondering if we've heard anything from any of our folks throughout the tri-state area that have seen or heard of any damages. I know that the governor of New Jersey has talked about having the emergency services out. Certainly the governor of New York is going to be speaking shortly, I understand, on what things that the city and the state is doing as a consequence and a reaction to this 4.8 earthquake that was centered around New Jersey. I'm just wondering.
Like I said a while ago, over here in Northwest Tennessee, they claim that the New Madrid Fault area, which is just right above Reelfoot Lake in Northwest Tennessee, routinely feels an earthquake almost every day. And it may not be but a 0.2 or a 0.4 or whatever, but they claim that there's an earthquake almost every day. And with me living in an RV and the upper section of a gooseneck being basically above the ground, give or take about 5 or 6 feet, I can feel the smaller ones quicker than most anybody else can because of me being up so high that whenever it does shake, I can feel it routinely shake my trailer sometimes 4 or 5 times a year that I'll feel them. Sometimes I won't feel them. I remember one time in the 70s, Dad had a car up on the jack stands and changing the oil, and all of a sudden the car started swaying back and forth to the point that he thought that the car was going to lose balance and kick off the stands that it was on. And he started hollering, "What are y'all doing up there? Quit rocking the car! Quit rocking the car!" There wasn't nobody around the car. It was an earthquake. And that could have been substantial to the degree that it actually could have caused the automobile to fall while he was up underneath the automobile changing oil. That could have very well crushed him.
Could be done by an earthquake. And, you know, we have so many.
Hey, Bill, I can't thank you enough for your...
Yeah,
Bill, sorry to interrupt you. Can't thank you enough for your time. Let's go to the governor of New York, Kathy Hope.
Magnitude Earth.
Need to be a nightmare. Sleep well with HomeServe.
With so many things going on in the world, I know it's become a very complex world
For selling. Automatic program
to keep
for
up
selling.
with.
Are you very bullish on
with everything that's going on today. But as I said a while ago,
So many options.
we are so centrally connected with one another. Every action requires a reaction, and in a sense of
Into the bending area.
what didn't happen that should have happened,
Well, you know, we will typically
of the resistance
have
movement,
an alarm that kind of sends an email to somebody.
of the resistance movement that occurred in people thinking that they was going to be able to, I guess, outsmart God, or try to declare that in which what God had given to me to give to others pertaining to the message, that it was all bogus, or that I was doing it for the wrong reasons, like I was some sort of a nut in issuing out these advisories. Now we're seeing that the vast majority of the society in Northwest Tennessee was wrong. And they have no idea at the consequences of their wrongness and what that either they done or what that they didn't do that they should have done. Let's listen to this real quick.
To somebody, so we know that something interesting has happened. Of course, in this case, the building shook, so people immediately went to look at the data feed.
There's a pretty good sign there. Sir, can you tell, the gentleman we spoke to in Los Angeles said there's been no more activity. Can you confirm that?
There's been no significant activity that we've been able to detect right now. Now, there are networks of seismometers in New Jersey that will be picking up even the smallest tremors down to like magnitudes 1 or 2. And so I would expect that there'll probably be kind of a map of these tiny tremors that occur after this earthquake afterwards. The chance of earthquakes that could be felt in a wider region, that will persist for days and weeks. But it's very unlikely that this would lead to an earthquake aftershock that's the same size or bigger.
All right. Hey, you're a terrific guest. Thank you. And you're living your best life on a day like today, right?
I guess.
Think about that. That's extraordinary. Okay, sir, thank you very much, and best to everybody at Yale.
An exciting day in the basement at Yale, yes. We want to take it back to Jane Menard. She has some new information over there from Fox Weather. Jane, what do you got?
Yeah, just as the professor was saying, a network across New Jersey where we are monitoring for those aftershocks. Of course, it was magnitude 4.8 earthquake that really jolted us all this morning, and just about an hour ago at about 11:20 we do have a recorded magnitude 2.0 aftershock, this about 5 miles west of Bedminster, New Jersey. Obviously it is very weak, there wasn't a lot of shaking that was felt with this, but again, there's that 46% chance that over the next 7 days we are expecting to see the potential of a magnitude 3 or perhaps greater aftershock. So we're going to be watching this network very closely in and around the area. Now, it's been the strongest earthquake, of course, in 139 years, over a century for the New York City area, preliminary strongest in over 240 years for New Jersey. And so it's just incredible stats when you take a look back at how we haven't seen something like this ever since any of us were alive here to experience it. The seismometer here in Pennsylvania clearly picking up on the earthquake that happened earlier this morning. And again, this network of seismometers are going to continue to monitor for those aftershocks.
Let's back up. I want to say something here about this right here.
Expecting to see the potential of a magnitude 3 or perhaps greater aftershock. So we're going to be watching this network very closely in and around the area. Now, it's been the strongest earthquake, of course, in 139 years, over a century for the New York City area, preliminary strongest in over 240 years for New Jersey. And so it's just incredible stats when you take a look back at how we haven't seen something like this ever since any of us were.
I'm sure anybody that's familiar with those type of stats of the earthquake seismometer understands those lines going up and down, determines the longer the line, the more energy that is expelled at that particular area at that particular moment. That's one of the things that was a giveaway pertaining to the Oklahoma bombing compared to other explosions that has happened just within the past 15, 20 years. One of them was down in outside Waco, Texas, in a little old town called Newtown, Texas over there. I think it was Newtown, where a whole ammonia nitrate factory blowed up. And of course, we can see what the seismograph showings was whenever that occurred versus comparison to what happened in Oklahoma, as well as other parts of the world, all over the world. Recently, I think it was one in Pakistan that blowed up a whole factory that basically devastated a whole area. But what tripped the trigger in the Oklahoma bombing is that there was actually two readings. There was one reading that was a smaller reading, and then the second reading went way up. That even compared to the ammonia nitrate factory that blowed up down in outside Waco, Texas, did not exceed that reading. That is a fingerprint. That is a fingerprint that even to this day, the authorities in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, still cannot come up with a validated reason of why those two readings occurred simultaneously back to back with one another. Now they have recently come up with another theory that there was an inside job, that somebody actually planted explosions at different columns that caused the building to basically explode, and all the debris went back towards the Ryder truck versus away from the Ryder truck, which is theoretically impossible. But the fact of the matter is, they lied to their people. They didn't investigate it thoroughly enough. And because of it, people are losing faith in our government not telling us the whole truth. Nothing but the truth, so help us God. So whenever I went out west and I rolled up my sleeves and I went to house and I went from business to business there in the Oklahoma area, down around Bricktown and surrounding areas, getting testimonies and looking at various researches, I understood that yes, there was a cover-up pertaining to the Oklahoma bombing. But in my investigations, I also found out that there was more to the event that happened down in Waco pertaining to the Branch Davidians, of how that the ATF was basically entrapping a group of people by selling them assault rifles, automatic assault rifles and guns, and knowing that they was being converted over to automatic rifles pertaining to like machine guns, and because they wasn't paying a certain particular tax, monetarily speaking, that's what gave the federal judge the authority to sign off on a no-knock warrant from sun up to sundown that caused the death and injury, not just of those that died in the Waco Mount Carmel Branch Davidian incident, but also was a contributor to 168 people that recently died, or I say recently died, in 2005, 1995 of the Oklahoma bombing. And I still believe to this day that the United States government needs to come clean in fumigating some sort of a incentive for the victims, because the victims wasn't just those that immediately got affected, but it was for those that now are still feeling the consequences of that event. That there should be some sort of a fund, a federal fund for those victims and for the families and friends of those victims that was affected so deeply pertaining to that Oklahoma bombing. I still say that, and I'll always believe that. I'll always believe that the lives of the innocents still has not been fully reconciled with, as far as them knowing the whole truth versus only just parts of it. Especially whenever the investigators that was investigating the initial blast found detonators in the bottom part of the Oklahoma building that did not reveal those things until later on. That validates my story of the fact that somebody that was in charge of the Mount Carmel Waco incident, that where those calls was being made from the White House to Oklahoma, from Oklahoma down to Mount Carmel, where somebody had changed the dynamics of going from a rescue mission to a doomsday mission along about the 40th, 45th day of that event that happened, of the 51-day standoff down there. Can I prove that? No, I cannot theoretically prove that. As of right now, it is still a theory. But my theory, I believe, lines up better than now the theory that they're saying that it was an inside job towards somebody planting explosions on various columns that caused basically the inside of that building to be ripped from the inside out and throw all the debris back towards the Ryder truck, which is theoretically impossible. I just wanted to bring that out to my viewers pertaining to looking at those seismograph readings.
We're alive here to experience it. The seismometer here in Pennsylvania clearly picking up on the earthquake that happened earlier this morning. And again, this network of seismometers are going to continue to monitor for those aftershocks. Preliminary reports are bringing in, of course, a lot of shaking from Pennsylvania through New Jersey. The strongest of that shaking, moderate to strong, was, of course, in and around the epicenter. And we are getting some information about the fault lines in and around this area. Of course, it's the Ramapo fault system. So you have the Ramapo, the Hopewell, and the Flemington, and in early indications this could be a thrust fault.
Okay. Jane, thank you. Stand by. We got more questions for you, but we'll hold that, okay?
Yeah, that's for sure. We'll be right back.
Feel it at all, it seems like. Now, you're a New York guy through and through. Yeah. Had you ever felt an earthquake before? Have you ever been through one?
No. So the last one that occurred, I was on Long Island, and I didn't feel it at all. Just saw the social media posts, everything about it. But this was I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know something happened in the building, anything nearby, but definitely an experience.
Listen, guys, Jack was actually out here getting some lunch. He wanted to get a hot dog. Luckily, the hot dog stand didn't fall over, so you're good to go.
Good to go. Good to go.
Thanks for your time, sir.
Thanks so much, brother. You guys have a good one. Be safe.
All right. And listen, guys, I texted my son. I go, hey, he's 14. I said, did you feel the earthquake? He said, yes. I said, what did you feel? He goes, the earth started to shake, and then it stopped. In typical teenage fashion. So he was, I guess, underwhelmed. Yeah. All facts. Cool, so I guess I'll get the full scoop from him later on tonight. But so far, yeah, it's been a little bit hit or miss. People have really felt it, or they didn't feel it at all.
I hope his buddies were watching.
Yeah.
Get the shout out. Thank you, Nick.
The kids and the dogs, yes.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
It's like the school commissioner, David Banks. He's at a big event in LaGuardia High, talking about how some people in the room felt it, but he didn't feel it.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, a lot of 911 calls came in right after that, and a lot of 311 calls as well. They've since subsided more than an hour ago, so it seemed like that was the moment where people said, take a breath. More new video now. Let's go back to New Jersey. This is Lebanon, New Jersey. Okay, so this is the epicenter, based on what we've been told, and what Jane was saying. What Jane was saying, the depth was 2.9 miles. So I believe the initial report had it much deeper in the earth, maybe about 8 miles. So there's a real good chance, Molly, that has since been revised. But that's something else there in the
this
garage.
looks like, one of the garage, the doorbell camera perhaps right there, which gives you an idea that that's the house. That's the whole camera moving. So that's pretty interesting to kind of see how strong that was. We have Katie Byrne she's out there right now with Fox Weather. She is in front of that very New Jersey house with the latest. Katie, what happened there on the ground? What do you know?
Well, we've just arrived here to Lebanon, so we're trying to figure out what could be damaged. We're seeing a lot of little pieces of branches on the ground, but some of the neighbors think that that's just been from the last storms we've had, really 4 days in a row of rain for so many people. This is the Skeffington family. You just saw Ring doorbell video from them, and they were at home when this earthquake happened, and you were describing this as kind of like a drilling feeling, right?
Yeah, I was walking my dog up the street, and it felt like the pavement was giving way under me, and I didn't know what to think or what to do. It lasted like a good 20 seconds. Yeah, it was very scary.
And where we are here, this is really the epicenter of where this happened. So you're likely to have felt the strongest shakes from this. Did it feel strong to you? Did you know right away this is an earthquake?
At first, I didn't really know what was going on. I had my headphones in. It almost sounded like there was a garbage truck behind me ready to run me over, but I pretty quickly realized it was a earthquake that was hitting us. So,
Have you noticed any damage around your home? Anything inside that had fallen over?
I had some mirrors fall down, china cabinet doors open, all the kitchen cabinets were wide open, but no damage whatsoever. So.
And I assume neighbors probably came out and were talking to each other, trying to figure out what just happened. What was that like?
Yeah, no, everybody really didn't know what to think, but everybody thought it was an earthquake, but it seems everybody's safe and didn't have any damage. So.
Lebanon is a pretty big town, or are you guys pretty, familiar with your neighbors? You guys talk to each other.
Yeah.
Have you been able to drive around and see anything else around here?
Yeah, we drove around, but we didn't notice anything like, everything looked pretty normal, but I could see a lot of people were outside and didn't know what to think. So, they were talking to their neighbors to see what happened. So.
And you guys could probably hear the helicopters above us, people trying to figure out what happened, if there's any damage. It seems like there's a lot of infrastructure assessments going on right now, but these are kind of the first accounts from people who live in town, where really was the epicenter of this whole thing, you guys.
The heart of it, Katie, great reporting. That was awesome to kind of get that firsthand perspective.
969. Now for
compromise. We don't have much time left, but in the past you've opposed conditioning military aid. Has your position shifted at all?
No, I don't think conditioning aid does anything at this point except weaken Israel's hand in the negotiations with Hamas and strengthen Hamas, right? I mean, I think what's needed here is both sides to actually take the next step and to get this necessary pause in effect, get hostages out, and of course get more aid in. I mean, I think we know what has to happen. I don't think coming up with new conditions is the answer. I think the only answer is getting to this temporary pause, getting hostages home, including Idan Alexander, who lives in my district in northern New Jersey, and his family I met with before I left on my trip.
Well, our hearts are with them, all of the families. We've met with so many of them. And thanks very much for all the efforts that you are undertaking, Josh Gottheimer.
So much. Thanks for having me.
And turning to a landmark weekend, starting tonight in women's college basketball, Cleveland is going to be the center of the sports world, hosting the women's Final Four in what has been a record-breaking championship tournament season so far. TV ratings topping for Iowa's playoff against LSU, 13 million people plus.
Go, girls, go.
Viewership for all baseball games except the World Series and the NBA as well. So, first up, Cinderella team NC State taking on a juggernaut, the undefeated South Carolina Gamecocks. And after that, two of the biggest stars ever to grace the college game. Iowa's Caitlin Clark going toe-to-toe with UConn's Paige Bueckers in what could be one of the most memorable matchups in the history of the women's tournament. So get your DVRs ready for Stay Home and enjoy it all. Enjoy the weekend. And that does it for this edition of Andrea Mitchell Reports. And then remember, follow us on social media.
Trade and not make money.
We'd love to see more attention paid by members of Congress, by the president, by everybody. It's all rhetoric, no action. And meanwhile, future generations just have a larger and larger bill that they're going to have to pay off.
Brandon, always good seeing you, even with those words of warning. But you're right, it's something we ought to pay attention to because someone.
I'm having an earthquake. What the?
This is one of the largest earthquakes on the East Coast occur in the last century.
I never experienced an earthquake before, but yeah, it was crazy.
We're ready for the unexpected. This is New York City, and we respond accordingly.
New Jersey's strongest earthquake in 240 years, 139 in New York City, rattles the East Coast. The initial 4.8 quake causing all sorts of disruption. Newark and JFK airports went into ground stops this morning to check for possible damage, while officials are warning commuters to prepare for delays while they check the bridges and tunnels. And with that, welcome to a Friday edition of America Reports. Sandra, it's been quite a morning.
Just another Friday. Good to be with you, John. I'm Sandra Smith in New York, and this is America Reports. The epicenter was 50 miles outside of Manhattan. It was Lebanon, New Jersey. In them.
Lots of video coming to us from Nest and Ring cameras, and experts warning there is a 46% chance of an aftershock larger than 3.0 in the next week. We've already had a 2.0 aftershock.
There's a blinking red light for Israel in American politics. Biden has run out of patience, but he's not Prime Minister Netanyahu's only problem. Congress is coming back into session in a few days with aid to Israel still up in the air. House Speaker Mike Johnson has yet to get a bill through the House that the Senate will pass. He posted this on social media. The president's ultimatums should be going to Hamas, not Israel. Biden should not undercut our ally amidst an existential threat by conditioning our support. So, what's next? NBC's Hala Garani is reporting from Jerusalem. Monica Alba is in Washington, and also with us, Peter Baker, New York Times chief White House correspondent and an MSNBC political analyst. Monica, Secretary Blinken today said there should be an independent investigation into that aid convoy strike. And in a statement, World Central Kitchen put it a lot more bluntly. The IDF cannot credibly investigate its own failure in Gaza. So what do we know about how hard the White House might push on that, or is Israel's word enough?
Well, it's really interesting, Chris, because the White House.
I said whenever this war first started over there.
Investigation into that aid convoy strike. And in a statement, World Central Kitchen.
Whenever this originally started, that first of all.
And in a statement, World Central.
War has never been a glorious thing on either side. That's the reason why diplomacy is always better than out-and-out war. And I've said from the get-go that there would be collateral damage, and even to some extent, sometimes each side will kill each other out of carelessness or gross negligence. I agree that food should be brought in to the lives of the innocent. But you keep in mind, this is like a needle in a haystack in trying to kill Hamas and all of Hamas's cronies over there. And it has just turned into one of the most horrifying humanitarian disasters that the 21st century has ever witnessed or experienced. So please, please pray for those people over in that area. And the way that I understand it, that there's already exploding circumstances happening in other areas. I think Iran, I think 4 or 5 of their generals got killed. They're talking about retaliation. And this whole thing is just basically a powder keg, a tinderbox just at the point of exploding. And my point is this, that if it ever does fully erupt, regionally speaking, I don't know that America or any other superpower has the ability of putting it out. That's the reason why it is so crucial. It is so essential right now, more so than ever, that everybody pays attention to what is happening and what is going on. Not only on a humanitarian scale, but also on a political scale. Because we could wake up in the morning and see where somebody had dropped a nuclear bomb and killed 20 million people. Or maybe even 40 million people. It is that close. We're closer right now of seeing a nuclear catastrophe than the Cuban Missile Crisis ever thought about during JFK. We're that close. So by all these occurrences that's happening all over the world, regardless whether it's man-made or natural-made, leads me once more in saying that if there's ever been a time that a person or persons needed to have a bonding, close relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ and being prayed up, packed up, and ready to go up at any given time, living in these perilous times, today, my friends, is that time. I cannot explain it. I cannot demonstrate it. I cannot be any more openly about this than what I'm presently telling people. Please pray for the people all over the world pertaining to God's holy anointed people that has been subject to being under attack, lied to, lied upon, not paid attention to, anti-Semitism in ways unimaginable, especially due to the fact of the things that the Windmill Ministries missions, the founder, has been experienced now for the past 30 plus years. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless our American troops. God bless our endeavors. And shalom. Good luck to all of us.